Why don't we look a decade ahead and think about the year 2030? If there's one prediction I would offer, it's that we will be talking more about climate and carbon than about COVID. How do you think about climate and carbon and the year 2030? Do you think we're moving fast enough? What more can and should we be doing? Chancellor Merkel, why don't I begin with you on this question?
Ja, ich war ja Umweltministerin.
I used to be Minister for Environment at the time that COP1 took place, and I had the pleasure and honor to host it at the time. I'm now leaving office during COP26. The experience I have made over those years is that we did set things in motion during that period of time. But year after year, the distance between scientific knowledge and our actions became bigger. It's not as if we hadn't done anything. We have cut down CO2 emissions 40% almost 40% compared to 1990 levels. But we are still lagging behind when you compare what we do to the data that the science has provided us with. So the Federal Constitutional Court of Germany has exerted pressure on the German government to once again increase our targets. 65% of the CO2 emissions are to be cut from 1990 levels, and by 2045 we want to be climate neutral. But this will be a major technological challenge because we have to completely transform mobility and energy production. Every energy source, energy we need and electricity we need has to come from renewables. So it's a major technological transformation, an upheaval that could be compared to industrialization in the 19th century. And of course, those countries that are technologically advanced and also have the highest living standard have to make the biggest contribution. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we can cooperate with the APEC countries here and to find good and interesting solutions for the world here.
Prime Minister Ardern, you're sort of half a world away, but as you were just saying, this is an issue that really connects us all. I think if there's one thing that COVID and carbon share in common, unfortunately, is they both spread through the air and they don't respect borders. How does this issue look from your vantage point?
And if I were to continue to draw from both perhaps the similarities, but perhaps also the differences between those two global challenges, I'd say that some have argued that you saw a greater call to action and more urgency around the COVID challenge. And I've reflected on that and thought, well, actually, perhaps it's the immediacy that draws that out. Maybe that's why within our region and within the Pacific, climate change does feel very acute because there is an immediacy to it. We can already see the effects of it here. And you can see the effects of it in other parts of the world as well with those severe weather events. But in the Pacific, it is literally those rising sea levels that you can see now. When you visit some of our small island nations in the Pacific, you'll have their leaders who will point out to you where the sea sat when they were children versus where it is now. And literally, we have burial grounds that are now inundated. And that, to me, demonstrates how acute it is for the region. Now, we, as a country, we contribute 0.17% of the globe's emissions. And the point for me, though, is that you will never hear us say that that means our contribution should be any less than anyone else's, because the nature of a global problem is that no one can fall back to excuses. We all have to do our bit. In fact, as a developed nation, we need to do more. We have had to, like many others, though, make a very steep increase in our contribution because we haven't done enough till now. And we are, to a degree, playing catch-up. But how can we look our neighbours in the eye unless we demonstrate that we're doing our bit through our NDC, through our international finance commitments, and through what we do domestically?
Yeah, I was